talking about some very basic kind of ground level legal issues for startups and entrepreneurs. So entity selection, obviously, like what are the first things that starting a company you want to think about, and talking about fundraising as well. So after you start your company, you'll probably get to a point where you need to raise some capital. So we'll talk about some of the issues to look out for there. And also, not on the title, but I'll just kind of run through some typical legal mistakes that we see, kind of let you be aware of them so you can avoid those pitfalls. So, just kind of procedurally, if you guys got questions during the presentation, feel free to shout them up here. I'll do my best to answer them. I will try to keep the presentation for about 25, 30 minutes. Incidentally, that's how much time I have on my parking meter, so I know that the parking crease will probably be circling my car waiting for the meter to expire. So with that, let's see if I can get the slides moving. Okay, so let's start off with entity formation. So, you're all on the hive, you're all entrepreneurs, and just, I guess, by way of curiosity, how many people in the room have set up an entity before? Okay, so a few. Yeah, so for those of you that haven't, this will probably be a good primer on some basics of it. So I guess the first question is, we're talking about setting up a legal entity. Why do you need to do that? So one issue is credibility. So you're an entrepreneur, you're launching your business. People are kind of going to scratch their head if you're operating in a partnership or a sole proprietorship. So just by way of pure credibility, you should have an entity, whether it's an LLC or a corporation. We'll get into that, but you want to have an entity. A big one, limited liability. So this is the stuff that you always use. So incorporate today and you get limited liability. So that is true. You have limited liability from the debts of the entity. So that's really important if you're enterprise or tail or something like that. You wouldn't want your creditors coming back and saying, hey, Mark, your business failed, we want you personally on the hook for those. So as a general rule, you have limited liability. There's also some tax savings and tax planning opportunities that come into play by selecting the right entity. So those are kind of the reasons that we would do it. So with that kind of groundwork laid, what's your menu of choices when you're thinking about entity formation? So really the two big ones are limited liability companies or LLCs, and then corporations. I have a note here, partnerships don't use, with an exclamation point, because you really don't want to use partnerships or sole proprietorship. You get none of the protections that LLCs and corporations offer you. So, and just by way of note, if you're starting your business and you don't incorporate, you are automatically a partnership or a sole proprietorship. So you need to take some sort of affirmative action to actually pick out an entity and organize it or incorporate it. So those are kind of your menu choices. So with that being said, let's jump right into kind of the first type of entity, and that would be a corporation. So some of the basic points, it's an entity separate from its owner. Okay, so under the law, it's a separate legal person. So it can enter contracts. It has its own liabilities. That's why the shareholders are shielded from liability. The owners of the corporation are called the shareholders. You all probably know that. Structurally and operationally, the corporation is managed by a board of directors. Okay, those board of directors are elected by the shareholders. And the board of directors appoints the officers who run the day-to-day activities. So, kind of in the hierarchy of how a corporation is structured, you got the shareholders on top. They control everything. They decide who's going to be the board of directors. And that board of directors picks out and elects the officers who run the day-to-day activities. Kind of continuing with the corporation, how to form. The process it's not overly complex. You file articles of incorporation with the state. You can incorporate a corporation in any state. One of the popular ones is Delaware. So I don't know if you are in your business class, you see a lot of cases with Delaware corporations. You can incorporate anywhere. My rule that I tell people is, usually, unless you are kind of on the verge of getting venture capital or angel financing, and those people have said, we really want to see a Delaware corporation, it's fine to incorporate in Michigan. I always recommend it unless it's one of those unique situations. So you're going to file your articles of incorporation, probably in the state of Michigan. You're going to adopt bylaws. So the bylaws govern, hey, how does this entity operate? What are the rights of the shareholders? Who are going to tell? What needs to be voted on? All of that good stuff is within the bylaws. And if you have a partner, the next thing you're probably going to want to think about having a shareholder agreement. So the shareholder agreement is going to govern, what happens, if Tyler and I are in a corporation together, and I want to transfer my stock to like my crazy Uncle Ed. Well, if you have a shareholder agreement, it would probably say that I can't transfer my stock without offering the other partner a right of first refusal. So you're going to want an agreement that sets forth those key types of decisions between you and your partners. That's really important because if you don't have that and something happens where one person would die or one person wants to transfer or sell his stock, they would probably be able to do it without restriction. So having a shareholder agreement, if you have multiple shareholders, is super important. Going on with corporations, so tax issues. So real basic, corporations can either be taxed in a C corporation or an S corporation. So what C and S really refer to is the section of the Internal Revenue Code that they're governed by. What you need to know is that if you're going to use a C corporation, you're going to be subject to double tax. So as I said, the corporation is a separate legal entity, so the corporation is going to be taxed, and then the dividends that flow through to the shareholders, the SAM's going to tax those as well. So if you want to avoid that, and you meet certain qualifications, you can elect to tax the S corporation, which basically means that the entity itself isn't taxed. It all flows through the shareholders, and that can avoid the double tax. So that's something to just be aware of. I think that covers that. Kind of just summing up corporations. So I always like to talk to people about ease of operation. So when you're thinking about what type of entity to choose, ease of operation is an important thing. So I characterize corporations as probably moderate on the scale of ease of operation. It's not difficult to operate it, but you have to, comply with Michigan law. Michigan law requires that you have meetings. You got to use certain notices, and there's certain kind of hoops you have to jump through in the corporation standpoint. So I would probably put it as, ease of operation moderate. And another point is just, if you're, like I said, if you're on the door of, going out and getting venture or angel capital, they might prefer that you be structured as a corporation, probably a C corporation. Without getting into a lot of the nitty-gritty on why they like that, they typically don't want flow-through tax treatment. So if you're at that point and you're forming a corporation, we might say to you, doing a C corporation makes sense. So that on the menu of choices is the corporation. So the other kind of big entity that you're probably going to be looking at is an LLC. So that's a limited liability company. I said in a corporation, the owners are called shareholders and LLCs are called members. Just like a corporation, separate legal entity. So you're going to have that shield against personal liability. One note, you're not going to have personal liability if you personally guarantee contracts. So if you go out and get a bank loan, they're probably going to say, yeah, Nick, we'll loan $100,000 to your LLC, but we're going to want you to sign a personal guarantee. So that would be a situation where you would be responsible for the debts of the LLC, but that responsibility is pursuant to contract, not simply due to the fact that you're a member. So that's something to keep in mind. Just structurally, an LLC is managed by the members themselves, or it can be managed by a designated manager. So that's just structurally kind of how LLCs compare to corporations. Again, just we talked about how to form a corporation. Hey, how do you form an LLC? So the process is pretty similar. You're going to file articles of organization. Those are kind of the bare bones of what's in the LLCs. Really the bare bones of the LLC. You're going to have an operating agreement. So the operating agreement kind of fills in the skeleton of the LLC. It's going to dictate what are the rights and responsibilities of the members and all of that good stuff. You're going to want to set forth, what are the voting rights, when can you be required to make additional capital contributions, when can you transfer your membership interest. So all of those items should be addressed in a comprehensive operating agreement. And there's some other miscellaneous items associated with
form in an LLC?
You know, tax-wise, it's taxed as a flow-through, just like very similar to an S corporation. So that's good. You're going to avoid double tax, so that's always a good thing. Ease of operation, I said a corporation kind of moderate on the scale. An LLC, very easy to operate. You know, there's not as many kind of hoops you have to jump through from a legal standpoint in Michigan, so a lot more kind of flexibility. So, you know, that's something that goes, you know, is a plus for using an LLC. You know, and I say it's typically, you know, an LLC is typically the entity of choice for a startup that, you know, isn't on the verge of going out and getting, you know, angel capital. So if you are not imminently at that point, I typically recommend, usually, that, you know, you set up an LLC. Now, hopefully down the road your business succeeds and you have to, or you might be, you know, in a position to go out and get angel financing. And if they say, you know, we really want to see you set up as a corporation, that's okay. We can convert you into a corporation without too much additional work, but, you know, the LLC is typically kind of, you know, the entity of choice for you know, starting a business. So that's the LLC, and those are kind of the, I guess, the very basic building blocks of entity formation. So that's kind of part one of the presentation. Part two is fundraising. So if you are, you know, your business is formed, you know, you're pursuing your business, and you get to the point where you need additional capital, whether it's to grow or do whatever, and you know you don't have access to self-finance, or the business isn't keeping out enough cash flow to do it, you might be forced to go out and try to get additional outside investment. Okay, so I would say, like, you know, we're sitting here talking, you know, and I always tell people there's probably like a couple takeaways that you might get, you know, from a presentation like this. There's a lot of information, you know, it's tough to kind of grab onto concepts. Grab onto this. If you are, you know, going out and raising capital, you need to be aware of the securities laws. Okay, so in the cardinal rule of security laws, or one of the cardinal rules, is that if you're going out and selling a security or offering a security, you need to either register it or have a registration exemption. Okay, so this is like super important, because if you don't, you're going to be in violation of the federal securities laws and state securities laws. And what does that mean? Well, it probably means that you'd be subject to civil penalty, possibly criminal penalty. If the business goes south, your investors might be able to sue you to get their money back. So it's super important if you're ever getting money from third parties, including family members, you need to carefully evaluate whether you have a registration exemption. So I guess that begs the question, you know, I said if you're offering or selling a security, you need to have a registration exemption. What is a security? So does anybody know what a security is? Okay, I'll tell you. It is, basically a security is stock, okay? Or any type of, it's stock in an LLC, membership interest, it's partnership interest, it's debt. If you're going out and borrowing money from people and giving them a promissory note, promising to repay them, that's a security. So if you're doing any of these things, it needs to raise a big red flag in your mind. You need to consider whether you have a registration exemption. So that's what a security is. So basically, it's almost every capital raising instrument would probably be classified as a security. So huge takeaway if you get nothing else, just to keep you out of a bunch of hot water in the future. Yeah.
Was borrowing $1,000 from my mom just to get my startup off the ground kind of
Technically,
security?
yes. Yeah. Well, is your mom? Okay. Technically, yes. There could be some caveats to that. Is your mom an officer or director of the corporation or LLC? If she's not, it's probably a security. Yeah. So everybody always says, "Hey, Nick, like, I raised some money from, you know, I put some money into the business, and I raised some money from family and friends." And technically, there's no exemption for that. And, you know, practically, will anything come of it? Maybe not. But if the business goes south and, you know, family members upset, you could have some problems. So, okay, so I say, you know, remember the cardinal rule. If you're selling a security, you need to have a registration exemption. You know, Okay, so at that point, I guess let's just go on and talk about some of the common registration exemptions. And actually, one caveat. I said the cardinal rule of securities laws that you need to have a registration exemption. Another cardinal rule is if you're taking money from outside investors, you need to be very careful that you give them adequate and detailed disclosure documents. So in addition to the one cardinal rule, which is get a registration exemption, the other is don't lie and not tell people material facts about your business. So you want to make sure that you're giving them all the material facts that they need to make an investment. So this is like, if you've ever invested, you get a prospectus, you get that document that's about, this thick of like 8-point font on both sides of all the risk factors. They're doing that because they don't want to violate the securities laws that require them to tell you all the material facts about their business and all the risk factors. That's why you're getting all that information. So, like I said, let's spend a few minutes and talk about some of the common registration exemptions. So, the first one, and I guess before I launch into these, there's a lot of information here. If you guys want my slides afterward, I'm happy to give it to you. So, you can sit there and try to scribble down notes furiously, and you probably won't keep up. So if you want my slides, let me know, and I can shoot you a copy, and you'll have all this information. So the first registration exemption is under federal law, and this is called SEC Rule 147. And basically what this boils down to is if your business is truly, Michigan-based, so most of your sales are from Michigan, 80%, your office is located in Michigan, you're incorporated or organized in Michigan, and you're only selling to Michigan residents, then you're going to have federal securities registration exemption. So that's the general rule. So that's one that's commonly used. Okay. Another one that's commonly used in the state of Michigan is Rule 2021N, which basically gives you a state registration exemption if there's no more than 50 purchasers during any 12-month period. Okay. And here's another, I guess, important point. You can't generally solicit. So if you're to the point where you're trying to go out and raise some money, you can't publicly market the fact that you're selling a security and you're looking for investors. That's like a huge no-no, except for crowdfunding. And I'll talk a little bit about crowdfunding in a second. So just be aware that you want to be very careful with, like I said, if you're trying to go out and raise money and you're putting on Facebook or putting on a website that, hey, my company is looking to, this is what we do, we're looking to get some investors. That might be a huge no-no. So just be really careful of that. So that's a 2021N is a registration exemption under Michigan. Another really common registration exemption that applies to both state and federal law is 506B, Rule 506B under the SEC. And this basically allows you to sell an unlimited amount of money in securities to up to 35 non-accredited investors and then an unlimited amount of accredited investors. So an accredited investor is basically a person with a high net worth, like over $1 million. In this registration exemption, commonly used, pretty easy to comply with. It's self-executing pretty much at the state level. All you got to do is file a Form D, get the state notice, and you can satisfy the exemption pretty easily. That's the definition of an accredited investor. I'm not going to go through that, but just, it basically is somebody with a high net worth. But I am going to talk a little bit about crowdfunding. So, who in here has anybody done a crowdfunding campaign, even if it's not Kickstarter, just to raise money? Yeah. So crowdfunding is something that has been in the news recently a lot. So, and obviously, you all probably know the definition of crowdfunding. It's the process of basically raising money from a bunch of different people, right? So the crowd. So you're communicating to the masses typically online, and people are giving you money. So that's crowdfunding. So I guess the important takeaway here is actually pretty interesting. So there's two types of crowdfunding. So there's reward-based crowdfunding, which is like Kickstarter. So you're starting a Kickstarter campaign to do whatever it is you want to do. And you are basically, people are contributing, and what are you giving them in return? You're giving them some sort of token reward. You're giving them a t-shirt or you're developing like a video game, you're going to give them like an early release of the video game or something like that. So that's rewards-based crowdfunding, and that doesn't pose an issue under the securities laws. So that's fine to do. So obviously Kickstarter campaigns are totally fine. But a type of crowdfunding that's relatively new to the scene is equity-based crowdfunding. Rewards-based crowdfunding was really successful, and it led people, entrepreneurs, to say, "Wow, I wonder if instead of like using Kickstarter to raise money and give people T-shirts, I wonder if I can raise more money on like some type of Kickstarter-like platform. And instead of giving them a token reward, can I go out and get investors for my business? Can I, sell stock basically on through crowdfunding?" And historically, the answer was no, because as I said earlier, if you're selling a security, you can't use general solicitation. It's a historical rule. So that basically means that you can't get online and try to solicit people to invest in the company. It's like a big no-no. So that was the historical rule. So that's there's been like a lot of pressure, grassroots campaigns, and for the last probably like 10 years, people have been pushing the SEC to basically change the laws, pushing Congress to change the laws. And what they want is to basically allow equity-based crowdfunding. So good news for all of you. It is now, you're now able to do that within certain restrictions. So the first type of crowdfunding that was permitted is Rule 506C. So this basically allowed entrepreneurs and businesses to equity crowdfund to accredited investors. So I said earlier that accredited investor is basically somebody with a net worth over $1 million. So what Rule 506C allowed you to do was to access one of these websites. There's a bunch of them out there, like Angel List, and there's a ton. So these websites basically allow you, as the entrepreneur, to go on there, open an account, describe your business, tell people what it is that you're offering, stock, and what terms you're going to offer. And you can go out and get investment that way. So that's Rule 506C. The only downside of Rule 506C is you only can sell to accredited investors. So, in the grand scheme of things, how many, a lot more of the population is not accredited versus millionaires. So this was a step in the right direction for crowdfunding, but you only can crowdfund to like rich people. So it had limited reach. But it certainly was, and it is, one type of crowdfunding. Michigan followed suit and took crowdfunding kind of one step further. Michigan has something called the Mile Act, which allows entrepreneurs and startups to sell securities to both accredited and non-accredited investors using general solicitation. Okay, so that's a good thing, right? So that opens up the number of people that you can reach. The only kind of downside to this is that there's a bunch of hoops you have to jump through to use it, and I have them all listed out in subsequent slides. It probably doesn't make sense to go through them in a ton of detail, but let's talk a little bit about some of the big ones. So, and again, these are, just to summarize, we're talking about the registration exemption for selling securities in the state of Michigan that permits you to use, general solicitation and crowdfunding. So, probably the big ones to be aware of is number 2 here. So, you only can raise up to a certain amount of money. In Michigan, it's $1 million unless you have audited financials. In that case, you can raise $2 million. So, if you're an entrepreneur and you need to raise more than that amount, that's okay. But you have to work with an attorney or another advisor to kind of dig into the toolbox of registration exemption and fit another one or find another one that fits your needs. So, the Mile Act is capped at generally $1 million. Another big takeaway is that the Mile Act requires the business to satisfy SEC Rule 147. So talked a little bit about that earlier. A lot of detail. I'll give you my slide. But basically, what that means is that your business needs to be truly local in nature. So most of your sales need to be in the state of Michigan. The investors need to be in the state of Michigan, and the proceeds that you're raising need to be used in the state of Michigan. So I guess it's a practical rule. What this means is that if you're going to be using the Mile Act, you need to, you're probably going to be more of a brick and mortar type establishment, maybe a service type establishment. It's difficult to use the Mile Act if you're selling stuff online, right? So it's tough to sell stuff online, and 80% of your gross revenue is derived from sales in Michigan. So just keep that in mind. So that's a big item in the Mile Act. The other, I guess, important point, Rule 5, again, selling securities, really important to have, detailed disclosure documents so you comply with, so you don't violate any of the anti-fraud rules that are in the securities laws. These ones are pretty straightforward. Again, these are just requirements for the Mile Act. So, 11, each investor makes acknowledgments about the risks of investing. Again, this is, you want to make sure all of your investors are fully aware of the risks and they, are capable of making the investment without, jeopardizing. That investing isn't too much more than they can handle, basically. So you want to have detailed acknowledgments in there. So those are the big elements of the Mile Act. So before I get to the top 5 mistakes, I think we're closing in on a half hour here. I don't have it on the slides here, but recently the SEC passed another crowdfunding exemption, which is known as Title III crowdfunding. And basically, I said earlier that the SEC initially passed 506C, which allowed businesses and entrepreneurs to crowdfund to accredited investors. That's only to poor people. Well, part of the law that enacted 506C also included an expanded crowdfunding for non-accredited investors. Okay, so the only problem was all that legislation was basically contingent on the SEC issuing final regulations. Well, good news, I think within the last 10 days, the SEC came out with about 300 pages of final regulations on Title III crowdfunding. And what this means for you is that it's just another way that you can solicit and get investment through crowdfunding. And basically it allows you to use general solicitation to raise money from non-accredited investors. So there's quite a few restrictions on who can invest. So generally non-accredited can only invest up to $2,000. You got to make the offering has to take place through a broker-dealer or a portal, but it's just something to be aware of, is that it's just another kind of tool in the toolbox for raising money. So I just wanted to note that. So that's probably the key takeaways from fundraising. Again, the biggest one being that if you're selling security, a light bulb should go off in your head to look very closely to make sure that you are satisfying the securities laws that require registration exemption. So key takeaway.
Nick, quick question.
Yeah.
With crowdfunding, if, let's say I have a project or I want to create a prototype or whatnot, and I go on Kickstarter or any crowdfunding website and raise money, if I don't end up meeting my goal, or if I fail, or if I don't get the prototype, do I have to return all the money?
No.
Or
No, absolutely not. No, I mean, that's one of the risks of investing. So, yeah, now that would clearly be something that would be detailed in your private placement memorandum in the risks of investing, is that, hey, like this is a startup company. There's a good chance you might fail and you might lose all your money, but no, you don't have to get the money back.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, great question. Okay, so I guess with that, let's just run through kind of top 5 legal mistakes, and then we'll answer any questions you have. So top 5 legal mistakes. I guess there's probably a bunch. That you can make, but these are kind of the ones that you probably want to be particularly aware of. So number 1 is not having comprehensive operating agreement or shareholder agreement. So you can have an operating agreement if you are organized as an LLC. You can have a shareholder agreement if you're organized, so if you're incorporated as a corporation. So there's been tons of cases and situations where people just didn't agree on important issues up front. And having a comprehensive document and planning for those contingencies up front, I guarantee will save you many headaches down the road, and definitely will save you a ton of money down the road. Because when you don't address these issues up front, what happens is you have disputes later, and disputes cost money. So taking the time to go through all of the issues that could arise up front will make your life easier down the road, and will make your business operate better because you and your partners have taken the time to figure out what's important to each other and address those issues. So it's super important. Top 5 mistake number 2, not complying with the securities laws. So selling securities to people without getting registration exemptions or giving them detailed disclosure documents is a huge problem. Like I said, you're technically violating the law, and if things go south and somebody really wants to be a pain in the butt, they can sue you, demand your money back, they can complain to state securities regulators, they can complain to the SEC, they can do a bunch of things that will make your life very unpleasant and will impact your ability to do business in the future. Right, so that's number 2. Number 3, something that, we're here to talk about entrepreneurial issues. I spent a lot of time talking about securities and raising money. Number 3, not protecting your intellectual property. You're all entrepreneurs. You got good ideas. Not taking the time up front to talk to a knowledgeable advisor and figure out, hey, do we have something that can be patented? Do we need to get a trademark? Not taking the time to do that is really risky. I mean, basically what you're doing is not investing in the most valuable asset, which is your ideas, and protecting them. So taking the time to protect your IP, really, really important. Not making a Section 83B.
For number 3, what are the rules for, say I'm talking to my buddy about my idea, and he goes out with someone else and creates a business based off my idea, what are the people?
Did you protect your IP before you talk to them? If your idea is something that's patentable, is it patented? So yeah, there's some risk to that. So that's why it's really important when you're talking with people about your idea to make sure it's protected up front. Maybe if you're, maybe have a confidentiality agreement, do something really important. So yeah, that's a risk. So that's why it's so important to protect it.
So if it's technically not on paper, it's
more of a risk.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you need to have an LLC set up in order to file or a confidentiality agreement?
No, I mean, you're a person just like an LLC, and you can contract. Yeah.